was like, oh wow, you don't have to do more. It's like, no, you don't have to do more. Just focus on what you have right in front of you. What did I say last week? Because this too shall pass. Everything passes. So what are you doing with the time that you're in right now? Even if you feel like it's a little bit of despair, what is God calling you to do through this time? What are the little things you're supposed to appreciate? Who are the other people that He brings to mind that are in the exact same situation you're in? That maybe the two together, when you talk, can uplift one another. It's just kind of one of those messages where you just need to pull up a chair. We're doing a series, a 4-week series, kind of on resiliency. Last week, we looked at appreciation. And this week, I said we were going to fall into the throes of despair, but as Christians, we know that who is with us. We're in those darkest times of despair. Today, if you listen to the words of the songs, just cast all your anxieties on Him, turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full into His loving face, and the things of this world will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. It's those kind of words that just kind of stick with you. They go through your head. I don't know about you, but after last week, this week, besides "Here I am, Lord," that I could not get out of my head, "Oh God, our help in ages past." Don't know why, but we sang that one last week, and that was just going through my mind all week long. But it's kind of nice, isn't it? It's the words of encouragement when life is just not going right, when nothing seems to be going right. Mike can attest to that. Right before we performed today, everything seemed like it kind of went wrong. And yet, it's took Him off good. And God is with us. And God is good. What was last week? God is good all of the time. And all the time, God is good. Well, I had to laugh. I said, last week I had to do my in-standing paperwork. So that way, I guess I'm in standing with the denominations. And I said, well, if I don't turn that in, does that mean I get to sit? So I guess I took that literally. But as pastors, sometimes people like to put us up on pedestals, right? They think we have it all together. They think we know everything, and life is all sunny and roses. Well, I guess I kind of am on a pedestal today. But you know what? Life is pretty quick at knocking us off of our perch, isn't it? And no, I don't have it always all together. It may appear that way, but there have been times when life just gets to be so much, you feel if there's one more thing that happens, like even your husband breathing wrong, you're going to snap. Maybe that's just me. Maybe nobody here that's ever been married has gone through that, where every little thing gets on their nerves, whether it's their spouse or their kids or even the dog. If you scratch my leg one more time. Isn't it they say, I have the one last nerve and you're on it? Well, there's a reason why those sayings are out there, because that's humanity, right? We're all that way. If you read Psalms, that is David, literally. He is at the end of his rope. He's at his wit's end more times in Psalms than not. And yet, even in the darkest throes, even in the darkest valleys, the lowest points that he's ever been, how does he always end his Psalms? Looking up. He doesn't stay in the throes of those valleys looking down at the ground. He looks up to God. And no matter how bad the situation he is, Lord, I know that you are God. I know your love and your mercy can prevail. And I know that you are the stronghold of which I hang on to. And I cling my hope. Those are strong words, because they're words of hope that we need in those times. This last couple of years, as I've listened to more and more people, not even so much this congregation, but just in general around There is that feeling of despair because it's stuff that we can't control. It's external. It doesn't matter if it's just COVID or if it's the things that are going on in the world or if it's Russia with Ukraine. I mean, can you control that? Or if it's people that are infringing on things that you believe, can you control that? No. And it's that level of stress that just keeps surmounting. In the past, for I would say, the last 2 decades, we had stressful situations, but there's kind of that ebb and flow, right? I think this is the last time that I can remember where it's been kind of this. It hasn't really dipped too much. It's always something new, always something that keeps people in that constant state of feeling helpless and out of control. And that can throw people into despair. They said right now we are experiencing the highest level of suicide that we have ever had in history. And it's suicide from a whole bunch of stuff, but it's all external factors. And that just really hits hard when you think about that. Things that could have been prevented. Things that if life had gone a little differently, we wouldn't be in these situations. When I thought about the difference between men and women when dealing with despair and depression, for the most part, and I could be wrong, but guys can kind of just close down. They just go into their little nothing box, and you can deny it, but if I asked you, you all have a nothing box. And if you say no, ask your wife, because if she says, what are you thinking about? And you say, nothing, you're in your nothing box. Guys' brains are that way. They're compartmentalized. Think kind of like waffles. You deny it, but it's true. But see, as women, we're not that way. We're not wired that way. Our brain is like a big mess of electric wire that's going all the time, and everything's looping and everything's touching. Our brains never shut off. We can't help it. That's just the way God hardwired us. And I like the electric. I've heard it with spaghetti, and I'm like, no, I like the electric fence because it's just sparking and on fire all the time. But when you think about that, there's the 2 ways that you deal with despair or frustration or when things are out of control. Because guys can go into that box and they can just chill. You come home from work, for the most part, and you sit down on the couch. You can either turn on the TV or look at your phone or whatever, and you can kind of decompress. But what do we do as women? We come home, and there's a house to clean, and there's supper to get ready, and then there's dishes to do, and there's laundry, and there's this and this and this, which is fine, but that's the way we're wired. We're just going all the time. We're thinking. So when it comes time for going to bed, and maybe this is just in my household, my husband can go, I'm tired, and start snoring. Me, I was up till 3:30 the other night because my brain would not shut off. But it's that looping. And the thing is, what is looping in your mind? And when you're in your nothing box, you may start thinking of things. What are you telling yourself? It's those things that are going through your mind that when you listen to it enough or you start saying it enough, start becoming reality, whether it's even true or not. Maybe you had an altercation at work. Maybe it was something with your family. And it was something bad, and you listened to that. Maybe somebody said, oh, you're just worthless. They didn't really mean it, but they were having a bad day. And so now what happens? That's looping in your brain, and you're hearing you're worthless. You're no good for nothing. You get too old, right? Somebody younger is going to do it better. And that starts looping, and then pretty soon, even if there's not an ounce of truth to that, you start to believe it. And it throws you into that prose of despair. That's why I said that guys can go to sleep right away. When we first got married, we had at our bridal shower, everybody was supposed to write on a recipe card words of wisdom that we could live by, that we could go back and rifle through. And I had like 5 or 6 people, this is from the way older generation, that said, never let the sun go down on your anger. Resolve all issues. And how is that possible when somebody's sleeping immediately and there's no way we can resolve it? And then I figured it out. After about 3 years of marriage, I was still mad, and he says, well, I'm not. And I said, why? And he says, well, because I already worked it out. And I said, how'd you do that? And he says, well, I had a conversation with you in my head, and it all worked out. I just wasn't privy to any of that conversation. We're just wired differently. And it's those things, those little things that can build up over time. When I was doing this workshop, it was interesting because they have a breakout session. And this is all on Zoom, and it's from people all around the world. And last week, the 3 people that I was in with this, it was me and 2 others in the Zoom meeting for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. One guy was from France, the other gal was from Spain, and I was from Nebraska. And we didn't have anything in common. It was just talking about appreciation. And it was a good little chat for about 5-10 minutes. Well, this week, and again, it's just random people thrown together. This week, we were supposed to be talking about strengths, but it didn't even go there. I had 2 ladies in my group, and I thought it was funny because with Zoom, you can take the one good picture of you, and you can post that up there for everybody to see how cute you are. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, so they just get what they see. The other gal knows how to do the green screen. I haven't figured that out either. So you can see her, but then you see green screen all around. It's whatever picture you want to have behind you. And we get to talking, and for some reason, the one down below, she mentioned that they were dealing with infertility. They had been married for, I think, 4 or 5 years and weren't having any luck and was struggling. And then I told her, I said, well, we had done the same thing. And we'd struggled too. And I said, just don't let that so absorb your life that you miss the life that you're living right now. Because when it is God's timing, it will happen. And you'll never have this time that you have right now ever again. Well, then the gal up top, she goes, oh my gosh, it's the same thing. We were dealing with the same thing. They had their first kid right away, and then 10 years went by, and they couldn't have another one. And they'd been struggling and struggling. And then finally they had their second one, and then they had a third one that came right along. And that's why the green screen, because you could see a little hand that was doing this all the time. She had a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old, and you could just see behind the green screen, you could envision the absolute chaos that was going on in her house that she's trying to manage while she's trying to talk. We all had the exact same thing. We spent the 10 minutes not talking about I guess in a way, a roundabout way, the strength. And they don't even remember what I had said with the gal up top, but I told her, I said, the same thing happened with us. I talked about our second one. I said, I didn't tell you about our third one. Same thing happened. Couldn't get pregnant if I got pregnant with the second one, and then boom, the third one came. We had so much in common. And we were giving each other words of bolstering up, of sticking to it, just writing out the storm. And as I sat back, it was really funny because they were like, oh, thank you, we needed to hear just that. Even though we weren't talking about what we were supposed to. The words that God had given each and every one of us was just what we needed for that day. And as I looped through that conversation that night, I thought about the masks that we wear when life is out of control. We can wear the mask like Hannah down the bottom, who had her cute little still shot picture for everybody to see while her life was falling apart behind, or so she thought. And then we can wear the green screen, like the gal up top, whose life was complete and sheer utter chaos. But hiding, trying to hide that from the world, while trying to appear as though we have it all together. Or we can do all natural like I was, with the dogs barking in the background. And I don't have a cat walking across my keyboard. But with Zoom, that is the one thing that's made us allowable to connect with people all over the world in ways that we never could. But it's given us a chance to be real, hasn't it? I've been in pastors' meetings where somebody had a parent with Alzheimer's that was in the background. Life is tough. I've been in Zoom meetings with people who, they may appear on Sunday, they have it all together, and their house is just in total disarray. Those are my kind of people. So through all this time, and maybe the despair, I think if anything else, it's allowed us to become more real. You know, we're doing everything differently. There's change. All the time there's change. And I love what Barb had sent us by email. And I'm sorry, I was going to print it off and I was going to read it, and I didn't. But it was perfect because it was talking about that nothing's the same. And you know what? Life is never the same. Every day, I said this before, every day that you wake up, you have different skin cells, you have different hair strands. Everything is different. Whatever experience you had yesterday, it has already changed you from the way you woke up this morning. Go to bed. You're always changing. We think we're creatures of habit, but we really live in change. And with Zoom, it's caused us to have to change everything with COVID. We have to wear masks. We have to sit so far apart. We have to broadcast. We have to stay home. But it's allowed us to become more real and allowed us to connect. And I think about all those people that are home right now that are still too scared to come back to church. Or they're not scared anymore. They just got out of the habit. And it's hard. And for some people, it's because they lost a loved one. And that's what's been really hard during this whole COVID time. Those that lost loved ones that never got to come to the funeral. They never got to have closure. They never got to see family. They're still reeling in those throes, and more people have died since we're going on 2 years. Many have lost a ton of people. And the last time they remember coming to church was when they were still here. And it's just too hard. I get it. Last week we talked about that appreciation about, sometimes in the morning, if all you can do is just get out of bed, that's okay. It's being all right with living in the moment, living in the grief. We all grieve differently. We all grieve at different times in different ways. And if the best thing you can do that day besides getting out of bed is putting on 2 socks, whether they match or not, that's okay. That's all that was expected of you that day. I had heard a thing from Byron Katie. It says, we put ourselves in so much pain when we try to make things go the way we want or we think it should. Sometimes the best present that God can give us is a song that we sang, Let Go and Let God. Just let it be. If there's something you have absolutely no control over, just pray to God and ask Him for the acceptance to know that that's okay. You don't have to have control over everything or over that situation. But just spend that time asking Him to deal with your heart, to deal with patience maybe, to deal with peace, to deal with strength, and ask Him to show you what it is that right now He's asking you to do during that. Maybe there is something that is your strength that you go, you know what? I can just choose to look at this in a negative way or in a positive way. Those 3 women that I talked to that day, that was the big thing, was that this too shall pass. The gal that was up top with all the kids, she was so frustrated because she felt like she needed to be doing something else. She needed to be focusing on maybe a different ministry or in a different area. And I said, you've got 3 little ones at home. Right now, that's what God is calling you to do. That's your ministry, right there. And just hearing those words was just like a breath of fresh air. It was like, oh wow, I don't have to do more. It's like, no, you don't have to do more. Just focus on what you have right in front of you. What did I say last week? Because this too shall pass. Everything passes. So what are you doing with the time that you're in right now? Even if you feel like it's a little bit of despair, What is God calling you to do through this time? What are the little things you're supposed to appreciate? Who are the other people that he kind of brings to mind that are in the exact same situation you're in? That maybe the two together, when you talk, can uplift one another. So my challenge this week, I told you last week to take your little note cards home and start writing down every day something you appreciate. This week, I want you to write down one or two things that maybe you've been struggling with. You feel a little disparaged. And then I want you to start thinking about maybe somebody else who's going through that exact same thing. Ask God to put that on your mind and your heart. And reach out and give them a call. Just let them know that, guess what? The two of you are not alone. And that there are others that are dealing with this too. And I can guarantee you, after you talk with them and you chit-chat for a while, you're both not going to feel quite so much despair. Because somebody else cared to talk about it.